Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Happy 2025, fellas. Apparently it's going to be our year. New year, new you. Things can only get better, as the song goes.
Well, I mean, I always enjoy a bit of a new year. You can always think of like, oh, what's the first X, Y, or Z you did in the new year? I saw my first movie of 2025 the other day.
Nosferatu.
Which was Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And it read.
I do like Robert Eggers. Yeah. I'm a big egghead, as we call ourselves. That's not true. I don't think that's real. And
you could make it a thing, though, George. You could make it a thing.
Hashtag egghead.
Classic eggheads. But yeah, no, I love some of his previous films, like the Northman and The Witch, and I'm in the middle of watching The Lighthouse.
Which I haven't seen sort of any of his other stuff, but I love a gothic horror film, and I've seen the original Nosferatu, like the silent one, so I was like, oh, I'm interested.
Oh, you are cultured. You're probably the only person left alive that has actually seen that film.
The original Nosferatu. Well, any kid who did film studies, like...
I only saw it recently. I saw it for my wife's birthday. She wanted to go see the original Nosferatu when it was playing in a cinema. And it was awesome, but no, saw the new one, and it's great. It is a dark, creepy, horny as fuck vampire story with a vampire that's actually like an all-encompassing evil. I love that. Like, I love Buffy, I love True Blood, where they're all like sex symbols and all that, but to have him just be this decrepit thing is so cool.
Robert Eggers seems to occupy the space, the Venn diagram. Yeah, you got creepy on one side over here, and you've got extremely horny on the other side. And Robert Eggers is the point where those two things cross. So,
oh yeah, like I said to my wife as we were leaving the cinema that I felt like not since Alien had I like really appreciated making the scary stuff sexual working so well. Like,
that was part of the thing with H.R. Geiger, the guy who did all the artistic design for the Alien film, was that all of his stuff was like very kind of like gooey alien / pornographic, right? Like,
yeah, and the way that, because vampire stories are always so like, oh, the vampires are charming and represent like desire, and
there's a sexual element.
There's always like a sexual sort of thing in there, but like points where there was like one shot in Nosferatu that made me go like, oh yeah, actually that's a bit wild, when he's like feeding on a man and like he always like bites kind of in the chest, like kind of right in the pec or on the breast.
Nice.
And he's just like on top of this guy, and he's just like gently thrusting as he drinks, like pulses with it. And I'm like, oh, that is so disturbing, and I love it. Like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like Alien doing you don't quite realize how sexual this is until it just hits you suddenly. Like, that's why I feel uncomfortable, because this guy's getting assaulted.
Yeah, like, the dick exploding from John Hurt's chest didn't tip you off.
Oh yeah, when the vag spider like shoves things down throats and makes men pregnant is the Alien like scary sex stuff. So yeah, love Nosferatu. It's also beautiful to look at, like if you like gothic creepy imagery and all that sort of stuff. Great time. Would recommend.
This is a news
the theme for this. For this year is scary and horny and great to look at.
I mean, Adam, that would 2025 would be my year. I reckon if those are the three words that like describe my year: creepy, horny, good to look at as one word. Yeah, that wonderful. I would die a happy man.
It's actually my Tinder bio. So.
That's creepy, horny, great to look at. Speaking of creepy, horny, and great to look at, John Howard.
The actor?
No, the former Prime Minister. He obviously was our former Prime Minister, and this week they have unlocked the cabinet documents from 2004 because there are record keeping procedures that mean that they have to disclose them.
Every 20 years. New year, new us. New year, new what was the government doing 20 years ago they didn't want us to know about?
So it might not surprise you to know that all of the things I pointed out last week, or whatever it was last month when we were talking about housing affordability, these are discussions that the Australian Parliament was having 20 years ago. So it's good to know the more things change, the more things don't ever change. So the year was 2004. The median nominal capital city house price in Australia was just short of 400,000. Hilarious, adorable. Or the equivalent of 6.5 years of annual family income. But the chat in cabinet, according to these documents, was home ownership is becoming increasingly unaffordable. States should work to release more land and speed up development approvals. All of the things that the government is still discussing today in terms of increasing housing affordability.
Well, the best part about it was that in June of that year, the Howard cabinet considered a response to a productivity commission report on home ownership, and they found that turns out negative gearing rules and capital gains tax concessions are actually making investment really attractive to people, which means that demand for housing has gone up.
Yeah, it's almost like...
So therefore, prices went up as well.
Exactly what I was fucking talking about last we talked about this, was that the capital gains tax discount basically incentivizes people to put their money somewhere. And so it's either going to be the housing market or the stock market. The stock market in 2004 obviously, wasn't getting fantastic returns, especially wasn't, after the financial crisis of 2008. So, of course, people naturally gravitated towards housing because the government has basically guaranteed a form of investment that you can't lose on and will give you a discount for any money that you make in that area. It's like, of course people are attracted to it. Like, unsurprising, really.
Yeah, and I've seen some response to this with when people dunking on the Howard government and expressing the exact rage that George just expressed there around this with, the kind of response of, but who's in power now? Like, da-da-da-da-da. And I feel that's missing the point, because the point here is that they knew when they started
in 2004,
doing this,
yes, exactly,
that it was going to cause exactly what we're seeing now, and chose not to do anything. Like, yes, it's still a valid point to be like, oi, Albo, get off fucking voting in the hottest 100 and fix the housing crisis. But yeah, it's the point that they were told by something they commissioned, hey, this is bad. And they went, nah, we stopped listening. It incentivizes investment. And we were happy days. It's doing its job.
It's, in all fairness, Tom, it is the purpose of productivity commission reports to be ignored by the government at the time.
Of course,
so people don't actually read those things. What are you crazy? They're so dense. It is interesting that's like, that they knew exactly what they were going into. They knew it was going to be bad for the country, and they did it anyway because number go up, and people are happy when number go up. It really is could be the tagline of the Howard government as a whole. We knew it was bad, and then we did it anyway. Like referring to the Iraq War, referring to a number of different things. Like they were just like, we knew it was bad. We're completely full of shit. We did it anyway. John Howard. Like.
Interesting as well, they had there was discussions around the Timor-Leste border negotiations. So Timor-Leste was a pretty new country in the scheme of things. In 1999, Australia sent a contingent of peacekeepers in there to ensure that the independence from Indonesia sort of went smoothly, because it wasn't going smoothly for a time there. But in the wake of that, obviously the same government, the Howard government that sent those peacekeepers in, was then obviously in negotiations with Timor-Leste about the border, the maritime border, and the riches that lied within the sea north of Australia and to the south of Timor-Leste. It's quite a resource-rich area. And they were interested in these cabinet papers, the ABC was, whether or not there was any sort of discussion around the spying element. Because, yes, we saved this country, and then we decided to spy on them throughout this process.
Didn't we also
we bugged all their officers on the way out.
Didn't we also bug the Indonesian president, Bang Bang Yudhoyono?
Yes, although I'm not sure whether
Or
that was
that's
exactly
separate
at the
to
same
this.
time or whether that was separate to this.
Yeah.
as far as I'm
We're
aware.
bad people.
We're
not
bad friends,
good.
apparently.
We really are the
Yeah.
United States of the Pacific, where we're just like
We're bad people, but we're also bad spies.
Yeah.
Apparently. At least the United States does it, and they don't get caught. Right. Everyone, wait, guys? Right, guys?
Like that time John Bolton said on international television, and I should know from coups because I've done a bunch of them. And Jake Tapper was like, sorry, did you just say you done a bunch of coups? Is that what you're admitting to on national television?
Yeah.
So the documents actually didn't reference anything about this bugging, although it came out. And to be fair, these documents have been heavily redacted. They don't reference anything about the bugging, though. Simply talking around the negotiations of the gas reserves, oil and gas reserves that are sitting in that sea. For the record, we kind of dogged them a little bit. I'm not sure if these negotiations are actually finished. They might still be ongoing to some extent. I'm not sure. But I know that we were trying to give them the thin end of the wedge, basically, as part of all this. So it's interesting that was going on then, and it was in discussion many years later as well.
Speaking of Iraq, as we were before, there was also part of these cabinet records which were released, revealed that the Howard governments had increasing concerns about the safety of troops deployed to Iraq in 2004. I think it was in June or July of that year. Oh, no, here we go. The US government's argument that Iraq possessed extensive stockpiles of chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons, Australia's basis for sending troops, was found to be without foundation in January of that year. So in January of 2004, the Howard government knew that the whole WMD thing was bullshit, and we persisted to keep troops there for many, many, many years thereafter. So
it was 2007, I think we pulled out, I want to say, of Iraq.
Were we fully out as Australia, you mean, or
as Australia?
I thought the Australia had troops in some sort of troop contingent in Iraq long after that.
Majority of troops were withdrawn, I think, 2007 when Rudd came in.
But still pretty wild to think.
Okay, here we go. 2009. Stopped their operational role in 2009. Australia fully withdrew from Iraq in 2011. Yeah, I thought so. I thought we had troops in there for years and years after that.
That's like 7 years. So,
but when we fully withdrew was May of 2011. Later, so 7 years later. Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild when, like, I mean, if your mate says, hey, this is happening, and you're like, yeah, man, I'll back you 100%. And then they say, I lied, the thing didn't really happen. And you're like, we're expressing issues with the safety of our troops. Like, I'm finger wagging at you, but I'm still going to help you with that problem for 7 more years.
Yeah, I'm very concerned. I am deeply concerned about this. I will only help you for another 7 years.
Yeah.
Well, part of the problem
it's the Penny Wong solution. It's I'm not happy about this, but I'm going to keep letting you do it.
Part of the problem was that we went in there, we removed Saddam, and then there was this, an insurrection that then fired up immediately afterwards. And it's like, well, do we just... There's like, do we then... Because of the first problem, do we just bail and then leave them with a bigger problem?
The reason the society collapsed is because the Americans... yes, but it was the process of de-Baathification that happened, where basically... the United States and its allies went through and deconstructed the state, removed the Ba'ath Party from all positions of power, and thus all the expertise that went along with all of that. Yeah. I wonder if there's probably younger listeners of ours that are listening to this being like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? There was a place called Iraq. We ruined it. That's the extent of it. But yeah, it is crazy that they're like, oh, what are we supposed to do? Leave the power vacuum? It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have thoroughly deconstructed every element of state power in the country. And then you wouldn't have to deal with that. But at the end of the day, it's like,
oops.
Yeah, a little oopsie poopsie on that one. But I don't understand how the response is then, okay, well, we'll just stay here for another 7 years. Like, hopefully it'll get better. It just never made any sense.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was a Rudd election policy to withdraw, and they did that.
Yeah. I think
within that first term.
because there were lots of calls to be withdrawing from Iraq. So but I mean, it's the same as what happened with Afghanistan later, right? It's like, oh well, the power vacuum will happen eventually because we can't stay here forever.
But I mean, that's what happened with Afghanistan. They just got there like 20 years later, right? It was just like, I honestly don't think there is a way to successfully wind down a desert forever war. Like at a certain point, you just need to fucking leave. Like it was the same justification in Vietnam. It was the same justification in, all of these long wars. Is like, oh, well, we can't leave now. Things just getting good. Like, and then
no, we fucked it up. And now we can't leave.
Yeah, now we need to surge. Now we need to fuck extra hard to unfuck it. And it's like, when has that ever worked?
Yeah,
literally,
fuck harder is the
you just have to, bro. You just have to fuck harder. Said Julius Caesar 2.5 millennia ago. The only way to unfuck the Caucasus is to fuck them harder.
I mean, honestly, it's the last thing they'd ever expect.
Also interesting, in that year, the federal government changed the definition of marriage to between a man and a woman.
Yes, and they just did it. They didn't have to have a huge, big debate over the validity of certain people's existences. They just did it. They just did it for shits and giggles.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Allegedly, it was in response to some various state legislation changes, but I'm not sure what those changes were. I'm not sure the full story there. I'm sure there's a lot more to dig on that particular issue.
I still think it stands that it's kind of a bit fucked that they could just do that,
100%.
and then it took a bajillion years, and then like one of the most harrowing misfires in policy to get it through. That fucking Turnbull still is like, nah, I'm a legend. I'm a legend that I got that through. Like, fuck off.
Good. So, 2004. Howard went on to win the next election and secured another 3 terms in Parliament. Was that the one against Mark Latham?
2004, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well. There you go.
Survived the world's most aggressive handshake and went on to win that election.
In all fairness, given what a nubber Mark Latham turned out to be, I think it's probably for the best that John Howard.
I was going to say, choice between a douchebag and a psychopath.
That's a real douche versus turd sandwich situation there.
It is pretty crazy to think re-electing John Howard was dodging a bullet. I think that's,
What are you talking about? Mark Latham was incredibly stable 10, 15 years ago. That when he assaulted the cab driver, that was cool and normal.
Oh yeah, well I guess it was before Twitter, so we didn't get to hear all the horrific homophobic things he likes to throw around.
For fun. So moving over to the United States now, and Donald Trump obviously won the election. He's the president-elect, but turns out he's still a convicted felon amongst all that.
You'll always be a felon to me.
And they need to sentence him for the Stormy Daniels hush money saga. Turns out a judge in the United States decided, nope, we are going to sentence you just before your inauguration.
Yeah,
deal with it.
It was all a bit up in the air because once he won the election, they stayed the sentencing because it was going to happen like around the end of November, but given the election at the start of November resulted in that, they postponed it just to be like, no, we're not going to do it on the initial date. And then I think, Trump's legal team were pushing for, no, you got to throw this out because he's the president now. He's a king. He's the god king of Arrakis, and you can't fucking
literally the Leto the sandworm emperor at this point.
Yeah.
And honestly, from a physiques perspective, not that different from Leto the second.
I mean,
same body shape.
He is indeed Shai Hulud, the largest of all the sandworms.
It's me, Shai Hulud. A judge.
Yes. The change that's happened now, because that's what they were pushing for, a judge has ruled that no, you can't just ask for him to not be sentenced for something he's been convicted of. So they will sentence him, I believe, January 10th is the day that's going to happen, where we find out what it is.
And the inauguration's on the 20th or the 21st?
Yeah, the 20th is usually I think 21st our day, I think our time. And the election will be ratified unless the lefties want to storm the Capitol tomorrow.
Unless Mike Pence does the right thing.
Yeah. We're
hero of the Soviet Revolution, Mike Pence.
Mike Pence.
Yeah.
No, well, it's Kamala Harris is the vice president in this instance, so she could do the funniest thing in history
and not ratify
and not certify the 2024 election. That would be funny. It would be terrible for democracy, but it would be very funny.
But yeah, so yes, this judge has said that January 10th they're gonna sentence Donald Trump for the 34 counts he was found guilty on in the hush money trial, but don't get too excited because they've added that they're not inclined to impose a jail sentence. And they wrote a sentence of, quote, unconditional discharge, which means no custody, no monetary fines or probation. Oh, no, no custody, monetary fine or probation would be the most viable solution. Are we all giggling at the phrase unconditional discharge?
Yeah. Title of my sex tape, unconditional discharge.
I just think that unconditional discharge being the penalty for having sex with an adult film actress is just, it's very fitting.
And then lying about it and trying to cover it up.
Yeah, it's the lying. It wasn't the sex, to be clear.
And I think that's just very strange because... so I see where they're coming from in that they're like, this guy's elected president, so they're dealing in uncharted waters here, and I know like they're maybe afraid to rock the boat. But the judge, I think, in rejecting the argument from Trump's attorneys that they should drop the case because it would impede his ability to govern or whatever, like he's going to do much of that anyway. The judge said that setting aside the jury's verdict would, quote, undermine the rule of law in immeasurable ways. And I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of what Trump's done undermines the rule of law in immeasurable ways.
Have you met Donald Trump?
Yes, particularly that he has been constantly and consistently saying that, the case is illegitimate and that the judge's rulings are unfair and wrong and all this sort of stuff. If I did that, if I was constantly yelling about how, no, this, yes, you've convicted me on blah, 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 but this is bullshit and not real and you're a fraud. This is a political attack. I would be held in contempt of court and thrown into the Tower of London.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah.
Yeet you across the sea.
Yeah, right.
The Tower of London.
Yeah.
Fucking
it's an exchange program. We're sending convicts back to London. So
yeah, they can be our prison for a change.
Mm-hmm. And then you get in the Tower of London, and then you steal the Queen's crown, and then it's a heist movie. I'm putting together a team.
So they've
the crows or the ravens. What are the birds in the Tower of London?
Crows, I guess. I don't know.
Crows.
I think they're
ravens.
crows. They're the ones that if they ever left, they're tagged and have had their wings clipped because there's a superstition that if the crows all leave, then the tower will fall.
That makes perfect sense.
It's probably more to do with the structural integrity of the tower, I would say, than the.
They have to make sure that the crows stick around. Anyway, my point is, if you're putting together a team, I want a scene where chatting to one of the crows, and the crows all get together and agree to help us, and they're like, "You son of a bitch, I'm in."
It's like the Eagles from Lord of the Rings. They just decide to make the choice to help you. You can't force them; they've got to make their own choice to be there.
Yeah.
Interestingly, so Donald Trump, his criminal case in Georgia over the charges stemming from his effort to overturn the 2020 election loss is still in limbo. We haven't really had any word as to what's happening with that.
Well, no, but given that the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump is rubber and not glue and bounces off him and sticks to you, then it's kind of irrelevant.
It's kind of irrelevant. The FBI records case was dropped, I believe, from memory.
In the Supreme Court precedent of the people versus rubber and glue. The president is a fucking king tyrant.
Your Honours, if I may enter an amicus brief to the court, it just says nana nana foo foo. I don't know what that's about.
Obviously there was the I guess it's kind of the explosion outside the Trump Hotel this week, which was a bit crazy.
It might be the most American thing that I've ever seen. So it was like a Cybertruck. For those who don't know, there was an army. Was he a current army?
Ex-army.
Ex-army.
Or maybe current. I don't know. Whatever. These are
regardless, former whatever it was, either
Green
current
Beret.
or former. Yeah, Green Beret, who parked a car in front of a Trump hotel, a Cybertruck, and then blew it up.
Yeah.
It was like blown up with fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was packed full of fireworks. I don't think it
Crazy.
killed anybody. I think there were 7 injured.
Injured people, but no dead.
The man inside was already dead.
Was already dead.
He
Suicided.
He shot
prior.
himself
Yeah,
first.
okay.
And
So-
then,
That's just a wildly, like, aggressively American image of like a Cybertruck blowing up with fireworks outside of a Trump. I don't know if there's any way to make it more American than that, but it might be maximum American.
Add a flag. Add several flags to the situation.
Okay.
There may well have been flags there. I don't know.
And
but
apparently,
obviously
the guy apparently did it in protest, like to draw attention to the drones in New Jersey thing that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago before we went on break.
Yeah.
Which seems like a kind of a confused.
a bit extreme.
Apparently, since I've like heard reports just today about how some people believe that most of the drone sightings are actually just sightings of planes landing at LaGuardia Airport.
Yeah.
It's just like essentially just like a mass hysteria event. It's like, what, you guys never looked up prior to the
Yeah, wow, no one's tilted their necks back. Was there like a buy one get one free on physio, and suddenly everyone in Jersey has better, like, more languorous necks?
I guess there's just been an explosion of yoga and Pilates, and people are just all able to look up all of a sudden, I guess. But so yeah, basically this commentator was essentially saying that he believes it's essentially a mass hysteria event, as people just keep hearing about all the drones, and now everyone's looking up and seeing just like commercially available drones or like literal planes in the sky. Like, oh, there's a thing with lights above LaGuardia Airport. It's like, yeah, it's probably a plane landing at the busiest airport in the country, probably.
Yeah. Very sort of unexpected thing to happen. And I know people were wondering whether or not it was connected also to what happened in New Orleans, because another ex-military person committed that attack where they drove a car into a group of people. But that
which seems like more of a straightforward terrorist attack from
yes,
from
but yeah, I think they've said there's no evidence that these two people knew each other. Like, even though I think they had both served at the same like base, but yeah, there was no sort of like linked connection to them. But seeing two ex-military people do something like that within the same day was an odd coincidence.
Yeah, the guy who's running that base has definitely got a couple of phone calls. What's going on?
Yeah, 100%.
What's going on over there, buddy? What you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's weird that he decided to. I mean, obviously, as someone who's going through quite a lot of PTSD, and was quite a conflicted person.
I think we can say safely not of fantastic mental health.
No, but apparently he was a Trump supporter. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I read that as well.
That they're doing that outside the Trump hotel.
It doesn't feel like the actions of a supporter.
And in a Cybertruck. I thought, like, not to, like, I guess, like, I don't want to, like, speculate too hard to then turn.
Well, the fact that Elon Musk is so closely
but,
tied to the presidency seemed significant, right? Like,
and the other significant part is that he wasn't just a guy who owned a Cybertruck. Like, he rented a Cybertruck.
Yeah.
It was like a hire car.
It feels like a statement.
So, like, it seems far too intentional. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know anything. So, but that's a wild thing that happened in the.
It's been a weird week in the United States.
It's been a weird, like, December 20 to now, like, the point where nothing happens, where it's just Christmas and New Year and everyone forgets what day of the week it is.
He hasn't even taken office yet. This is all in the lead up to him taking office. It's like another 4 years starting in whatever it is, 2 weeks. 4 years from then.
Yeah.
Buckle up, buckaroo.
2029, baby.
Someone in Victoria who won't be having a great 2025 is John Pesutto, who is the now former Victorian Liberals leader. On our last show, before we broke, George and I covered a story which you would have read about elsewhere as well, that John Pesutto basically had lost a defamation case to Moira Deming, and that he called a meeting to bring her back into the fold of the Victorian Liberal Party. She was a sitting member. She'd been I think a membership had been rejected from the Victorian Liberal Party. The sitting members
sounded like you're about to say excommunicated, which I
excommunicated.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say excommunicated as well.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if that has other connotations, but anyway. Since the defamation case was lost, he said, let's bring it back in. Now, he'd set a meeting up for a couple of days after, I think, prior to Christmas from memory. And very quickly, that meeting he set up got a bit spicy.
So the federal court judge found in Deming's favour, ruling that Pesutto had defamed her by suggesting she empathised or was associated with neo-Nazis. Yep. Okay, she's an anti-trans activist. She's not a neo-Nazi. Get it right. Okay.
Get your facts right.
Get your facts right. Just because she hangs out with neo-Nazis at rallies doesn't mean she is a neo-Nazi.
They just happen to be there.
Though I see how you arrived at that conclusion, John. He awarded her, the judge, $315,000 in damages. Pesutto then struck down a vote on December 20th to readmit Deming to the parliamentary party, which was a move that was divided the Liberal caucus. And then 2 days later after that, Pesutto backflipped, issuing a statement apologising to Deming and announcing his intentions to readmit her to the party. Yeah. It was after that where she said, thank you. I will take your readmission to the party and I will also have your scalp. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was going to say, which point, the whole
John Pesutto... Yeah, sorry, go on.
Well, like losing the defamation case and then being like, and I veto letting her back in anyway. It's like, a good look, friendo.
So it was at that point.
Loser.
At that point that John Pesutto was unceremoniously rolled.
It's pretty funny though that the meeting he set up to be like, okay, fine, I'll follow my sword and we'll readmit her, was also the same meeting that his Liberal colleagues were like, and we're going to have a. What do they call it in a official agenda item? It's like other business. So we're gonna have some other business.
Other business, and it's just like a little doodle of someone, like a little hangman that someone's drawn there with, John.
What's this other business in the schedule? No, don't worry about it. But can I just say, fuck them for having a lib spill while we were all on break.
I know, right?
What dicks? Like, come on! It was December 27 or something that they announced.
Well, I think that was.
Let us have this.
I think that was very much the point, that it was conducted over the Christmas period. It's a bit of a news blackout. Everyone's busy drinking 4 to 12 tinnies, likely on a dinghy somewhere. In their various respective home cities. Like, I think it was deliberately kind of done at that time to kind of sweep it under the rug, right?
Yeah, definitely. And my response to that is, how dare they? Lib spills are like a national sport.
They are.
They are just so juicy and delicious. I love it. And it's just
a great national pastime.
Yeah, a fantastic national pastime. And what makes it even juicier is it's the Vic Liberals. And the Vic Liberals, as we know, are rubbish. Like,
how many Victorian Liberal leaders have there been over the last decade? So there was Michael O'Brien.
Yep, other white guy name. Matthew Person.
Matthew Guy. Michael O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Guy again.
Yep.
And John Pesutto.
That's 4. But I think there was another one somewhere in there, wasn't there?
Was there?
I don't know.
Can't remember. I think we could look it up, but that's at least 4. They've
picked now. The guy they've picked, what's his name? Brad Batten.
Mm-hmm.
I love a bit of alliteration.
Batten?
Brad Batten.
It's very brat summer.
Yes. He's having a very brat summer.
What do we know about Brad Batten?
He's the member for Berwick, as I understand it.
Brad Batten for Berwick? Shut up.
Yeah.
It's 3. That's 3.
And is the before being elected leader, is the Shadow Police Minister. I believe he's a former police officer himself.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
love a former cop in positions of authority. That's cool.
Although, to his credit, I was wondering whether to bring this up or not. Like, to his credit, because I saw, like, oh no, former cop coming in, and that's no fun. We're here we go, more tough on crime sort of stuff. I did see, like, some reporting from maybe the start of 2023, so a while ago now, nearly 2 years, but him talking about wanting changes to the, to the system, particularly around incarcerations, sort of talking about, like, people of like pettier crimes or like white collar crimes and things like that, of not stuffing them into overcrowding prisons, and like reducing the number of disabled people in prison, being like, it's not helping anybody, like this doesn't rehabilitate these people, we need, like, saying a lot of things that had me go like, oh, me thinks I misjudged your game, sir, because those are sorts of things that I also believe, like, hey, if you're not setting people up for work and stuff after this process, you're not taking care of these people, you are just facilitating a privatized prison industrial complex. I don't know whether he still holds those views, but like, he was quoted as saying these things years ago, so I was like, okay, all right, but
I think we got most of that.
No, really? That's the most intelligent thing I'm gonna say all episode, and none of it came through.
We got a prison industrial complex. We get it.
But he did say, when he had his first press conference, he was like, yeah, my policies are a tougher on crime approach.
There it is. we should stop putting people in prison unnecessarily, but tough on crime. You square that circle.
Structural deficit.
Hey, you do the math.
And he wants to help with the cost of living crisis. And of course, he wants to help repair Victoria's road network. But they're all pretty mainstream,
pretty
liberal,
stock standard liberal
items, I would say.
Yeah, liberal talking points, I think. The question is, like,
boo.
I mean, the thing is like, not to give them any tips, but like, were I the head of the Liberal Party, I would think that I have quite a few things to run on against the current state Labor government. Like, you know, the deficit has gotten out of control. There's been a lot of like mega projects that have been cancelled. Like, I feel like there are things that like a credible opposition with a plan and like some policies and a couple smart people would be able to make hay of. And I'm just not really getting that sense from the current slate of state Liberal members that, you know, that they're really shipshape when it comes to like being able to criticize the current state Labor government.
He's saying that they're not shrewd economic managers.
I'm just saying I have concerns. I have a few concerns.
The Vic Liberals couldn't elect themselves out of a wet paper bag.
Yeah,
like,
that's what it seems like. And there are valid critiques. And the thing is, it's like we're starting to get to the stage where Labor's held power enough for so long that they're kind of getting to like the ancient Roman Senate levels of like power and gluttony. Like this is kind of like headed to the vomitorium for another round of, you know, feasting at the
large rail projects that don't quite make a lot of sense.
Fuck off, I'm full. It's like, please, sir, it's only wafer thin. It's like under, you know, level rail crossing is what he's being fed. Like,
more tunnels. I mean, the big infrastructure project that I don't really understand how they're going to do this reasonably, like feasibly, is the suburban rail loop, which is the big loop to go through the outer suburbs from one end of Melbourne to the other. I don't understand how we're going to pay for that. I don't understand whether or not, you know, there's been some reports that it's actually not going to deliver any sort of benefit. That being said, I will completely agree that going north-south in Melbourne, in the outer suburbs, sucks.
It does suck.
It absolutely sucks.
It does suck, but I think it's kind of the state Labor government's taking a kind of a field of dreams kind of approach to it. It was like, if we build it, they will come, surely. But
Kevin Costner reference.
I don't know if it necessarily really stacks up economically. And whilst I make no bones about, you know, I will not hide my support for Labor. Greens and then via proxy Labor. It does feel like we should have a credible opposition in place that can critique the excesses of the government, especially once we're like, 3-4 terms in. Like, we should really start having some kind of critique at this point. But I guess, I don't imagine we'll see it from Jim Jeffries. What's his name? Brad Batten. Sorry.
He does look a bit like Jim Jeffries, doesn't he?
He's got big Jim Jeffries energy.
Wow, actually, now that you mention it, that didn't hit me, but no, now that you mention it, oh, holy shit.
And that's all we've got to talk about today because we didn't do any research prior to this show. And
well, not a whole lot happened.
I was on holidays.
In the weird, like the gooch of the year of where nothing goes on.
It really is the gooch of the year, isn't it? It's just between the start and the finish. Yeah.
I've been introduced to that terminology for that week between Christmas and New Year, and I like it.
I like it as well. I'm going to keep that one. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for sharing your terminology. Pay it forward, everyone. Gooch of the year. When you're ready. When you're ready, George, you could continue.
Yeah. No, 10 more minutes.
Yeah, you can speak.
George is just miming the end of the show.
I need to be very quiet because my wife is currently going into the bedroom to adjust the temperature, so I can't talk right this second.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So we'll just
wait. Why am I whispering?
You don't have to whisper.
I don't have to whisper. Okay.
Okay.
I think I'd like to.
So how often do you guys think about the Roman Senate then? Like, just
I've mentioned it twice in this episode. So.
Yeah, I was going to say yes. That's twice today. I don't know when that trend was going around of how often do men think about the Roman Empire. I honestly didn't think I thought about it that often.
It's like at least once a week.
I don't know. Does it count if like something reminds me Gladiator was a good movie? Does that count? Because then I guess like it's about the Roman Empire. So I'm not sitting there thinking about, aqueducts were a great idea. Like I'm not thinking about that sort of shit.
Yeah, I can't say I sit around thinking about the Roman Empire, but every now and then it comes up. What do you guys hope for 2025? Obviously, we mentioned earlier that Trump is gonna be
inaugurated
on the 20th. So that will begin the 1,000 years of darkness. But like, is there anything else that you guys are sort of expecting for this year?
Oh, like expecting or hopeful?
Well, expecting, hopeful for I kind of hope the Gaza conflict wraps up at some point. I hope the Ukraine conflict wraps up. I think they'll wrap up probably for very different reasons. For the Israel conflict, Trump will be like, go nuts. With Ukraine, it'll be like, go nuts to Russia. And then the conflicts will be over by virtue of that. But I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, the way that they'll likely end under a Trump administration. But
yes, I don't think the Trump administration will do much to help in any way, shape, or form in that front. You're right. I think in the hopeful sense, it would be nice if maybe we've finally seen enough of what's going on in Gaza for people to sanction Israel enough to stop it. That would be my hopeful take. Whether or not I think that's going to happen, probably not. But I think what I expect will happen in 2025 is for our current federal government to be absolutely bollocked and for the Liberals to get back in under Dutton. What I hope happens is that they get a little bit bollocked and have a minor government with some other viewpoints, like the Greens.
Oh, you want a minority government? Oh my God, course. Tom! That is the main fear factor talking point the Liberals are throwing out there. That's what they're electing. That's what they're the whole bloody
Yeah. And Adam, you know what that leads me to think? That it's probably what should happen. That would be a good thing. Peter Dutton's afraid of it. It's probably what is a good thing to happen.
I can't believe that you think Comrade Tom, who's constantly sharpening the guillotines on the show, would want a minority government headed up with Labour and the Greens. I can't believe that you would be surprised by that.
It's the things I want my year to be. I want it to be creepy, horny, good to look at, and a minority government in the federal election.
And filled with Greens. Look, that would be good. My personal hope is that, Peter Dutton... doesn't end up biting the ring off Frodo's finger and then getting tossed into the chasm of Mount Doom. I hope he really just plays it straight this year, gives the Australian people what they deserve, a really nuanced, kind of intelligent political discussion revolving around policy and facts. But I get the impression that may not be forthcoming, what with the nuclear plan that they've got that they've microwaved from a couple of terms ago. So yeah, not feeling overly hopeful. I think it's going to be bad. The more we talk about it, the more I think it's not going to be good. Like 2024 was not good, and I think 2025 is also going to be not good. Like it talks about interest rate cuts are getting pushed out. I mean, they're only forecasting about 3 or so for the US. Interest rate cuts here in Australia are being sort of forecasted around May, sort of mid-year, could be even later than that if all these things, inflation still persists, because there's like a dollar devaluing situation against the US dollar, depending on what Trump does with tariffs, and that could affect us and our exports, and therefore the Australian dollar and our interest rates. And it's just
safe to say I'm not going to Europe this year.
No one's going to Europe this year. Europeans are coming here. That's what's going to happen. They're going to be like, oh, it's so cheap and wonderful, yeah. Yeah. So
what about you, Adam?
Yeah.
What do you
any
hope
hopes,
for
fears?
or think will happen?
Yeah.
The Roman Empire.
As in they'll rise again?
Like America will become the Roman Empire, literally and figuratively.
Which century of the Roman Empire? And this is important.
The end. The
last one.
I was reading about the fall of Constantinople the other day, and
I was going to say the Eastern or Western Roman Empire.
Both ended miserably.
They did. So.
Yeah. So either or, take your pick.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's what I foresee.
Yep.
Collapse of the global world order. There you go. That's my hot tip for 2025.
On that happy note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our Salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. And make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at our handle at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And you can follow me down to the Victorian Liberal Party headquarters, where I'll be throwing my hat in the ring for the next leader.
I mean, why not?
In the next 2 or 3 months.
Couldn't be worse. Could not be worse.
Why not at this stage?
Yeah.
I would ride that ship.
Would I?
Yeah, I reckon you could.
You could do worse.
Mean, Adam, not to mean this as an insult to you, it doesn't seem like that complicated a ship. So I reckon you could do it.
It's more of a dinghy at this stage, isn't it?
A little, yes.
I mean that. Yeah, I mean that derogatorily to them, not to you.
Yeah, right.
Does it have an outboard motor, or is it just got?
It's just a sloop. It's a one-person sloop.
You have already exceeded my knowledge of ships. So yes.
Okay.
Starboard.
Yeah.
I've heard of that one. That's the right-hand side, right?
Oh my god, that's so funny that we both just pulled the one naval directional reference that we had. It was like, man, that's starboard. That's like me going Italian, a pizza. Okay, thanks for listening.
You make it a wine.
Coliseum, meatball, spicy meatball. All right, thanks for listening, guys. 25's going to be a shit show.
Welcome.
Us. Welcome. Yep. Welcome to hell. Oh, fuck. All right, see you guys next week. Bye.
It'd be good if North Melbourne could win a premiership, though. That would be really great.